we have a little bit of time. I'll start our wrap up. Really want to start out by thanking everybody. I appreciate a lot of you have been on throughout the day or almost the whole day. So thank you. Thanks to the awesome speakers. We had such a great lineup. Just to wrap up, in the next year, I mean, we've heard about the things we're doing to date. Cynthia went through in her talk all the manuscripts and preparations. All the work groups are still digging into the data, finishing up, getting the assay data back, trying to understand them, layering on the ADME and other contextualization information. So we are still have plenty to do there. We mentioned at the beginning the launch of the dermal group. That is both for dermal toxicities such as skin irritation and sensitization, but also dermal absorption. So that'll really help inform, how these different botanicals are potentially moving through systems, and also looking at a few other assays in a space that has had a lot of success with new approach methodologies. So that group's still relatively new. If folks are interested, they can let me know. We'll continue to share our results at conferences, webinars, and increasingly more publications. And we didn't mention so much, but NIEHS is helping us put the results onto their database subs so that there'll be the publications, but then also the data for folks to look at with what we're generating. The Botanical Safety Consortium really launched in 2020. Cynthia mentioned, there was discussions before, but we've had every meeting be virtual. And I think that's been really beneficial because people can tune in from all over the world. But we really do see the value in getting everyone together. So next year, we're hoping to have an in-person summit to really highlight, this incredible amount of work we've done the last couple of years. So we're going to work with the steering team to get those dates on the schedule as soon as possible, but we are planning for something a little bit different next year. We do have some time for discussion. I know it's been a long day. We have opportunities for clarifying questions. This can be an opportunity for ideas of future work or topic areas. Or if there's things we should have on our radar, it might not be exactly something we tackle in the BSC, but it might be something as this forum to talk about. So, we had the great keynotes earlier around pearlizity and alkaloids. So things like that should, if they're on people's radar. So I can stop here and see if there's anything in the chat or anything people want to raise. Vicky, I see your hand up, or I did for a second.
You mentioned the issue about the negatives and the positives and how we should handle that. It made me wonder whether or not there might be some suggestions already in the literature that we'd want to delve into, maybe not specifically with mixtures, but essentially in vitro assays and, how people deal with the negatives and the positives, and whether or not they're looking for, as Cynthia mentioned, like the IV, the ADME and stuff, or is it help with certain pathways so that they know, that there's advantages or disadvantages, because I could see this really will help us understand at least more about the assays, if not about the particular constituents and stuff. So I didn't know if that would be something we'd want to consider, as looking back into the literature to see if we can get a little help or additional suggestions on that.
Vicky, I think that's a great point. And someone had a comment earlier on, I didn't mean to brush over, I think it was Stephen, who said, many of these assays are already validated. So we're really looking at to extending to this context. So it's almost a slightly easier bar. It's not that big V validation that comes with maybe the regulatory baggage. We're really trying to see how the assays perform. But I like your idea, Vicky, if there's been other in vitro efforts in trying to understand negative and positive results, we should definitely try and leverage. I see Michelle's hand up. Maybe she can take a stab at answering.
Oh, I don't know. It wasn't so much related to Vicky's point about positives, but I'm going to give Cyril credit for this, but she had, brought up the idea that maybe one of the things we can also think about to contextualize some of the results from this is to look at what data we have for the same assays for, individual compounds that have been tested, whether they're chemicals or pharmaceuticals, which again is not what we're trying to do within the BSC, but it's sort of a question of these assays have been many of them have been validated, evaluated, tested a lot with individual chemistries, and how we might use and leverage that data to help us understand what we're seeing with the botanicals. So it's doing a little bit of information collection related to those individual compounds and seeing how that might help us with the interpretation. And I thought that was a really good point and gets at that question, Vicky, to some extent of what you raised of how we can leverage the fact that so many of these assays are very well studied, just not for botanical mixtures.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And we would probably need to think about it of like doing things like matching controls and how we would match up data, or if it's just almost like sketching it, like, in the DART group, John Rogers had showed a paper from a number of years, but kind of mapping out all the results across assays. I think there's some kind of ways we could maybe, not to say it's the end all be all, knowing there's differences and technicality runs, but trying to at least see the spread.
Yeah, just doing kind of a little, like not a full on, full analysis, systematic review, but to try to see what we might be able to pull in to sort of help with that.
Yeah. And then Adam, on a different point, if I didn't see anyone else jump up for Vicky's response, but I think it's really good things we need to take back to the work groups and think about. Another area of concern is related to botanical safety. So botanicals in conventional foods and beverages. So I don't know, Adam, if you'd like to elaborate any more of that, or if that's just something we'd like to keep on our radar.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm just a humble environmental health specialist. Most of this all went way over my head, but I'm one of the regulators of food and beverages, and I'm starting to see it pop up in non-alcoholic spirits right now. And I don't think consumers are technically aware of the risks that certain ingredients pose, especially if they're on like an SSRI or something like that. And then a lot of these products, I believe, are intended for home use only, but bars and restaurants don't really know that. And so they're mixing them into concoctions and elixirs. And then they're showing up in bars and restaurants with no warning labels or anything like that. So I don't know if this is the right place to raise those concerns, but it's something that I'm going to be looking into.
No, I appreciate that, Adam, and give an opportunity for others to respond. A lot of what we're trying to do, is trying to come up with the tools people could use to screen for those botanicals. But I think then the next piece is the context. So, understanding, okay, how much would someone be consuming of this if it's mixed into, a non-alcoholic beverage, or if it's in food. So that might be where the layer of exposure is really important too, to both understanding, in vitro results or historical data. But would anyone else like to speak to that point, or if their company or institute has dealt with that?
I'll just say that we've talked about doing some testing of those kinds of products, and they're even harder than the ingredients we've been talking about today, since they're mixtures of mixtures. But yeah, I think it's an interesting area, and maybe we've talked about that maybe a second phase or some side work of the Botanical Safety Consortium could be around comparing across different products. So I think once we have a good screening battery in place, it would be possible to use that to look at different potencies of combined products like that, or yeah, the more food related things. I mean, as we saw from that work I briefly talked about that EPA did on vegetable and fruit extracts, even things we consume on a daily basis have bioactivity. So it's a big issue, and I look forward to the next phase of Botanical Safety Consortium tackling some of these really interesting problems.
Thanks, Cynthia. And thanks for raising, Adam. I think it's definitely a space to watch, as consumers seem more and more interested in natural products and different, not just in dietary supplements, but in cosmetics and food and beverages. So definitely keeping an eye on that and seeing how maybe we could adapt tools and approaches to it. Right. Olaf had a comment about the safety of complex mixtures. Shouldn't we go towards the studies of synergies and antagonism of the components of these mixtures? Olaf, do you want to speak more towards that? Do you mean like individual constituents? Do you mean specific assays that would look at antagonism or synergy?
Hello, I rather thought into the components or the subfractions of such mixtures to better understand how the extracts really have these, how it comes that the extracts have really these properties.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something to, I like Cynthia's point. It's almost like this phase is us establishing our toolkit. And then this is almost something where then once we have that, some of these questions could be better explored. Like if we know our battery of assays we want to use for cardiac, at least initially, like if we have a handle on that, we could then see, could we then suss out what is driving that response? Is it the whole mixture? Is it the water fraction? Is it the polar fraction? Is it this individual constituents? Similar to like what Tanya was mentioning, do you lose the effect when you get down to the individual because of the synergies? So, I mean, from my point of view, Olaf, some of this is like establishing our toolkit and then being able for either us as the consortium or for others to answer these questions, but really getting that handle on. But I'm curious to hear your point of view.
Yeah, I thought in a second step to better understand what we've discovered in the first step.
I always joke for this project and for others, I should have a sign that says tier 2, but we are getting there, I think, is the exciting part. So hearing these ideas are great to keep in mind. So thank you, Olaf. Okay, I know it's been a long day. For folks that are maybe new and have listened in, I'll leave the slide up for a minute. If you're not involved but would like to join, we have an application form on our website. We have a couple different buckets that you can be involved in. You can be, if you have the right expertise and your company or organization is a part of the consortium, you can be on a working group and really dig in and get some of this work done. We also have a stakeholder council, which get periodic updates. They get input. They have the ability to give us more input. They get invited to more webinars. So that's kind of another bucket. And then, just what goes to the general public, what's going out in newsletters, what we're sharing publication wise. So there's a couple different ways of both time and commitment of being involved. So that's there. And then if there's something today you had a question on, a comment on, thoughts, some of these future phases or ideas that sprang up, feel free to email us. That's our general email, but it goes to myself, Julie, and Michelle. So I think we can end there today. I think this has been an excellent meeting. I really appreciate everyone's attention and all the questions and all the speakers and their presentations. I really thank you all for your hard work. Thank you for everything.
And thank you, Connie. Done a
Thank you,
great job.
Thanks, Cynthia. Thanks, everybody. All right. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.